Shut up and sit down.
So this is the first episode of the Bowhunter Chronicles podcast. I'm your host, Adam Miller, here with my esteemed co-host,
John Boersma.
And so I guess to get started, we're just going to talk a little bit about who we are and I guess kind of what we have planned for the year and kind of what we're thinking about doing with this whole podcasting thing. John and I talked, I don't know, 6 months or so ago, right here in this garage, drinking some beers, about all the podcasts that we listen to and all the conversations that we have about bow hunting, and it basically consumes our lives, much probably like anybody that's listening. So we thought we'd throw our hat in the game and give a run at it.
Yeah, that's there's just so many out there, you know, listen to it all the time, and figure we'd give a shot at it. There's a dog barking. But
yeah, this one's going to be a little bit raw. It's our first attempt, but we're going to try to make it at least the quality of the audio something that you can listen to, even if Wilbur wants to join in every once in a while.
Yeah, he wants it out here because of that deer hanging.
Yeah, John just killed a deer on the second to last day of the season. Shot a doe, get some meat in the freezer, and I had aspirations of having this great season. I took a lot of time off, hunted a lot of days, and ended up shooting one doe that the coyotes got to after we let it lay. So that was unfortunate. Had some really good encounters and learned a lot, but I think I learned a lot more about what I need to do better. Last year, I didn't have hardly any success. I got a 2-year-old, so having a toddler and time and trying to get out. And I tried to make the most of the time that I had, but I think I'm spending my time inappropriately. I think I need to spend a lot more time scouting and a lot less time going to the exact same spot and expecting something different.
Right.
And that's what I did this year. And I started to try some new tactics as the year went on. So kind of like hunting while I'm scouting while I'm hunting, and that eats up a lot of hunting time.
Yeah, you kind of behind the 8 ball on that. I did the same thing last year. We had all kinds of hopes and dreams of getting out scouting early and doing it all year, and then of course didn't get out there, and then the season starts, and mine was a little different because I was trying to hunt for Jet, my son. So I was trying to get him out there. He's 14 now, and get him into a spot where he could, have a decent shot. But it kind of not really backfired, but it just didn't give me many opportunities. I could have shot at 8-point. He come in 11 yards, but Jet was just 100 yards away from me, so I didn't want to shoot him. And knowing that he was in the area, because where we're at, that's the QDM. So it's got to have 3 points on one side or better. So.
Yeah, and understand here, one of the things about this podcast and about our style of hunting is that we're hunting in West Michigan. So anything that you see on TV, or I think this is more of like your absolute regular guy hunting, because there is no ag. There is no, we'll just go to our farm with the food plots and
right.
in our stands and our high rises and all of our feeders. I have access to 240 acres of private land that is 8 hours away.
Right.
And so that's where I grew up hunting, and I will use the term hunting loosely. And I think, so John is my wife's cousin. And until I met their family, my hunting was go to our property, which at the time had the highest deer density as far as does, and our buck-doe ratio was really messed up, but it had the highest amount of doe permits in the state of Michigan. And so you did not have to hunt at all And at the time, we didn't bow hunt, and we didn't nearly bow hunt anything like we do today. And so it was go sit in the woods for an hour with a high-powered rifle, shoot a deer, and that was hunting. There was no scouting. There was no early season anything. There was no preparation.
Right.
And so now, where we're hunting, there's a fair amount of public land, but the amount of hunting pressure is absurd.
There's a ton of, it's Manistee National Forest, and there's just a ton of hunters. I mean, everywhere you go, it seems like it gets frustrating. I mean, that was one of the things this year I was frustrated with. Of course, I'm, like I said, getting started late, scouting during season, going to all the old spots, and it's like, walk along, oh, yep, there's a tree stand, there's a there's a bait pile. That's a whole other thing is the bait pile, or baiting. That was one thing that we grew up, a lot of guys, like my best friend, Jason, those guys grew up, and they were it was literally go over to Grant, load up a truck of, carrots, and go drive it out to the woods, and if they couldn't get the truck to the bait pile, they'd throw it on a tarp and drag it out. And my dad and, my family, we never baited. And we also couldn't kill does, so that was one of the things. It was kill all the bucks. A spike horn, it's good to go. But, I mean, so we were kind of lopsided, on that.
Well, once I started hunting with John's Uncle Frank, my father-in-law, and we're definitely going to have him on here because he is
a garbage man.
A riot. Tales of the Garbage Man is going to be a big part of this podcast, I think. But, so hunting with him, there was no bait. There was, they don't shoot does. And it was, we're going out, and after every single hunt, we drove around and we scouted and we scouted and we scouted. And I took all of that for granted. I just thought, man, this is, a lot of dinking around for for what? Because we never went back and hunted those spots. Maybe we didn't find the sign that we were looking for, or he was looking for, or whatever, but it was just something that we did, and I never even, it wasn't on my radar because that's not the way that I had ever hunted. And then as the years went on, one of the things that sticks in my mind that Frank said is, well, maybe you just got to get a couple under your belt. And that's when he started shooting does because, man, I had a heck of a time. I passed on so many deer, so many does. Before I shot my first deer with a bow, it took 10 years easy. I missed them at this distance, and I, let them walk by and, made poor shot choices just because of inexperience. And so, that was one thing that stuck with me was, maybe you just got to get a couple under your belt. And I think as the years go on, and if you wait for that perfect opportunity for that, wall hanger buck or whatever, then you kind of get out of practice, and you get, at least for me, like I get so amped up, like even, drawing my bow back on a deer, a doe or whatever. And I think that that's what does it for me about bow hunting is that, like, if, they say if you don't feel that way, then you shouldn't be hunting. But I mean, man, it's like every single time that every deer that I see, I feel like I can kill with a rifle, and it doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah, that was like when we started hunting. I've been hunting since 12 years old with a bow, and then gun hunting when I was 14. And the gun hunting thing back then was, we'd just go up. And at that point, my dad was so tied up with my brother playing hockey that I was just kind of on my own. The first year I went up, we went to the UP. They used to go to the UP every year for a gun season, had a big, camp and stuff. So the first year when I turned 14, we went up there, and the weather was terrible, so we ended up coming back. We hunted in free soil at a friend's cabin and stuff. Well, then the next 3 years, out of luck, I went with my uncle the first year. And actually, it was the first year I just went out behind my house right here in, Muskegon. And it was a snow day. I walked out, or my dad was supposed to go with, and got in the car, drove out there. And it was so snowy that I couldn't even find where my tree was. So I just sat down and got daylight. And a few minutes go by, and a buck comes running by, and I draw the gun up, boom, shot it, got it, 6 point. Next year, that's when I went up to Wall Hollow with my uncles, and actually it ended up being one of my dad's old spots that he showed those guys. And same thing, I was supposed to sit in my cousin's blind, and there was already someone in it, so I just walked across and sat down, just trying to get out of the way of that guy. And bucks come running in off to my left. I shoot one, 8 point. Seen it, shot it. The next year I was out behind my dad's house again, and we had been seeing this buck. My dad actually, it was one he had been seeing bow hunting. And I go out there, and actually it was a night that we were supposed to, I was playing hockey and he was my coach, so he was down at the arena doing the draft. And so I was like, well, I'm just going to run back. And I sat right at the bottom of his tree. Right before dark, 10 point comes walking out, boom, shot it. So it's 3 years, 3 deer, 3 shots. And at that point, it was like, I didn't do anything to earn that.
And here's something I want to I guess address is that's the way that I always grew up too. But in this day and age, that doesn't mean anything. And what I'm talking about is, you've said 8 point, 6 point, 10 point,
right.
And these are Michigan deer and everything now because of social media and everything is it 130 class? Is it
right.
And these are not. They're
the 8 point was nice. It was a decent buck. It was I think it was 17.5 inch inside spread. I got it mounted. And then the 10 point, that was really nice. It's got like 11 inch G2s. It's it scored decent. But yeah, they're not like Iowa bucks or.
What I just mean in the way that you're explaining
right.
is the same.
But they were trophies here. I mean, it was like holy cow when I killed the 10 point. We had seen him like all summer really. There was actually another one we said there was twins, and we seen them shining and stuff. But I ended up getting lucky and killing it. So then after that, I was still into bow hunting. I mean, I loved bow hunting, but it was like, it's way easier to go out with a rifle. I see it, I could shoot it, So then after I got some, bucks under my belt, then it was like, all right, I'm going to go out and kill them with my bow. So after that was like the last year, after I killed that 10 point, I didn't gun hunt again until Jet was like 12. And that wasn't even, so that was, what, 20 years, but more than that.
I think I've probably went out with the rifle maybe 20 times in the last 10 years, maybe. And I think the last time, and the reason that I don't go up and hunt our property in the UP anymore is I took all this information that I'd learned bow hunting, and I mean that particular year I had sat 25 sits at least before the opener, and I get up there and it's the typical Michigan deer camp with all of these guys that just want to sit in the shack with their heater and
right. Same, it's just like this, it's the same thing. And go up.
But I went and I sat and I told them where I was going to go, and they said you can't go there, nobody ever sees any deer there, that's not going to be a good spot. And in the first 30 minutes, I had seen 3 bucks, and one of them, we have a 4 on one side rule or 3 on one side at the time, and this was before any of the antler point restrictions, but right. That's what we were doing. And this ugly mutant buck comes in, but it had a ton of points. And again, this is Michigan. Doesn't matter what it scores. Does it have the appropriate amount of points? And it just wasn't what I was hunting. Nobody else saw a deer that day, and they basically called me a liar and said, why didn't you shoot it? And then the last day, same story. I ended up shooting a doe, and there was a 15, 16 inch buck that had points, and it was chased. They stopped, and I didn't have time to count the points, so I shot the doe for meat. And again, they said, "Oh, you're lying. I would have shot it." And I was like, "You know what? I'm done." Because that's not sportsmanship. That's not the kind of hunting that I want to do.
Right.
I don't want to be subjected to that.
That's the good old boys club.
Oh yeah. And so, I guess fast forward to where we're at now, and I mean, if you're watching this we're videoing it all. So, John's got his archery shop set up here. He's rebuilt that bow at least once now. He built his own string. He tunes all my bows and my brother's bows, all my family's bows, builds their arrows, and you're doing it all yourself.
Well, I've always, that was one thing. My dad was always into archery. He used to, before they had, factory camo bows, my dad would paint all the bows in, West Michigan. They would come through. Our local shop was called Angler Archer, and, guys would go and buy a bright, shiny bow, and they'd add $20. You want it camoed up? So then my dad would go down and pick up a whole load of bows, bring them back to the house, and he'd paint them out in the shed, camo them all up, and I remember as a kid, we'd get all the old, outdoor magazines and take an X-Acto knife and cut out all the deer silhouettes and does and stuff like that, and that's what he would use for the camo. He'd do a black base and then go over it with gray or green or brown. But so I've always been involved in it, and he was part of the Bowman's Club, and he shot target, and Frank shot target, Uncle Frank, and so I've always had the access to the equipment and stuff. We had the old Joe Jan half dozen Fletcher. Actually, I think it's still down here in the box. And so I've always built my own arrows for me, my buddies and shit. Excuse my language. But. So
when you started out with your first bow or whatever, was it brand new or was it your dad's old bow? Or?
Well, I started out actually, here's my first bow. I remember this because my mom tells a story about it all the time. Was just the old red fiberglass kid bow, and it's almost like the Christmas story where you shoot your eye out. My dad said, whatever you do, don't shoot at anything hard, because the arrow can bounce back. I'm like, yeah, whatever. I remember I go out. My dad wasn't home. My mom was there. And I'm like, Mom, can I go out and shoot my bow? Sure. So I go out in the backyard and I'm shooting at stuff, and there's this old football, and it was one of the ones that like the hard rubber that didn't even take air. And I draw back and I shoot that thing, and it must have only been maybe 10 yards, but that arrow hit it, and it bounced and came all the way back, and the knock hit me right directly above my right eye. I mean, I had a perfect, looked like a little tiny snake bite right in the crease of my eye and eyelid. And it was like, oh my God. My mom comes screaming out, jumping out the back door, But yeah, so that was my first bow. But then, we progressively, I ended up, I think I had an old PSE Pulsar or something. I can't remember the name of it. But, we started out, and my dad was like, you get a bow, you got to shoot the bail. All I had was just a flipper rest on it. No sights or anything like that, just the basic old compound. And then once I got good with that, then he's like, all right, well, we'll put a single pin. And back then it was just a bracket with this little brass pin, and you dip the head of it in some red, fingernail polish or white or whatever. And then just, got good with that. Fingers, and then finally got to a release, and, so...
I don't think I shot a release until I met Frank. I didn't even the John's family and my in-laws. My father-in-law's garage is like Cabela's, and I say my father-in-law is like Grizzly Adams. It's the guy's killed everything, seen everything, done everything. He worked at the sport shop for years and years and years, and unknowingly, I know he's sold me archery equipment, or he was the guy down there, when we were going into the local sports shop there. But I've always been, I guess the word is frugal, but I also think that along with that was naive, and one of the things I don't understand is my dad bow hunted, but it was never, he would only go up to our cabin and bow hunt. He didn't really bow hunt around locally that I ever knew of. But he had the first compound, or one of the first compounds that ever came out, this four-wheeled herders bow. It was literally one of the first ones in the magazine, and he ordered it, and it was the most dangerous thing. And he hunted with it forever, and he'd bring home a deer, every once and again. But I think back in the 80s, that was more common. It was like bow hunting wasn't big, and people weren't all that successful, at least around here. I mean,
my dad, like always, bow hunting. He killed a lot. I remember going down my garage. This is before. So we lived here in Michigan, and then we moved down to Florida in like '82 because the job market dried up. So then we lived down there for like 3 years. But I remember before we moved to Florida, we had this old train table in the basement, and there was a big box. Well, actually, there was a couple big boxes. And I'd pull out the box, and it was nothing but horns. I mean, literally just racks. And he killed a lot with his gun, but he killed a ton of deer with his bow.
Well, that was the conversation when I met my wife. I went over there and I walked in, and it was like the scene from Ace Ventura, like where you walk in and it's like, what a lovely room of death you have. And
this is at Frank's
house, yeah. And he comes down being the big dad, hey, and I said, "Do you kill all these?" He says, "Yeah, most of them." I said, "With a gun or a bow?" He says, "Mostly a bow." He says, "You hunt?" I said, "Yeah, we got 240 acres in the UP." He says, "Son,
welcome to the family.
Come on over." So, yeah, but John is real gear centric, so everything has to be just so.
Yeah, I'm a little bit anal on I like to tinker with stuff.
Well, but it always has to be this specific one. Like for me, I want to try everything, and so I want to say, "Oh, this looks cool. Oh, let's try that," like that. And I think one of the things, especially if you're new to hunting and you have an older bow, or if you've been clinging to this bow for 10 years or something like that, I will implore you to shoot a new bow. I had a PSE Sprint, or maybe the predecessor, as like my first bow when I was 12 years old, and I had that bow forever. And I was at our cabin in the UP, and I had set the stand in the morning, and I'd seen some deer. So the following morning, the last day, there was I just moved, and I was hunting with a climber, climbed up a tree where I'd seen those deer come through, and those deer came through right about the same place, but there was another deer behind them. So I waited, and I saw the biggest buck I'd ever seen up there, and it was probably 125-inch 8-point or whatever by today's standards, but at the time it was just a giant buck. And it was at about 35 yards, like sun beating down on it, looking around, and I did not have the confidence in my bow, my equipment, any of that to make that shot. And it's something that haunted me. Well, the next year I bought a brand new bow, and it was like going from I don't know, a Yugo to like a Ferrari. And I didn't buy the highest end bow. I bought, that was when Hoyt had the reflex line come out, and it was like one of the first years of that. And it was the year that they had started off with the goofy riser. And I bought the growler because it didn't have the goofy riser, because I was like, what in the world is that all about? So I shot that bow for a long time, and then bought another bow that was just an off-the-shelf Cabela's Bear, and that bow had all the same specs as the Matthews Helium that my father-in-law just bought, and I killed the biggest buck of my life with that bow after I dry fired it and took it to the shop, and nothing was wrong with it. So I got really lucky there. But and then I've moved up, and we started I started shooting leagues last year. We were just shooting small game, non-sanctioned, just to get you shooting
silhouettes.
And we had our first meet round last night, whatever.
Yeah, we shot last night. That's shoot for our averaged.
Yep. And I shot infinitely better just by upgrading my sight. I think. I mean, and I shot a lot more.
Well, that and you got a different bow now.
Yeah, I got another bow. But I don't think the bow. I mean, I could outshoot that bow last year, I think, but I think the sight and everything had more to do with that. Yeah. And once I got the new bow, and I'm shooting a Bear Arena 34 with the Optimizer Kingpin light, And I got that set up because we were doing the Total Archery Challenge last year. And, just shoot with the other guys who I would say are maybe on another level of shooting than I am. They're much better shots, at least in this indoor league, shooting spots and everything. They struggled with those long shots, and I think a lot of it was equipment based, because they weren't shooting the sight and they weren't confident in their equipment. They'd never shot anywhere near that distance before they went out there. And we're talking, what was the shortest shot? It had to have been 35 yards maybe?
Yeah, like on the local course, I think there might have been a 25, but most of those were, I think it went 25 to 55 maybe. But yeah, so John and all the guys that we hunt with and shoot in this league with had gone up for the entire weekend, and I only made it for Saturday. Right. So they had shot you guys shot every one of the courses that they offered, right? Yeah, in the end, we shot. There was the 3 courses. There was the local course, the Prime, which was the big one, and the Mountain Ops, I think.
There was a Sitka.
The Sitka was like added into the Prime. Course. So, we ended up shooting all those. But you shot the Sitka with us. Yep. That was the day we shot the Prime. That was the big. That was like a 4.5 mile loop. Yeah,
so that's another one of the things that we're going to do this year is we're going to go shoot at least the one. And us being in Michigan, we're real fortunate that they have one at Boyne Mountain.
Right.
And that's about maybe a 3-hour drive from here.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's, if I could pick one, I'd want to go to the one at Snowbird or.
Yeah, well, I've been trying to. I'd like to make it to the one in Montana.
You have ulterior motives, though.
Yeah, hopefully I draw a tag for Montana this year. So, but we were just out there in August. We went out, and we have a buddy that lives out there right in Bozeman. So, just unreal. I've never been out there. I mean, I've been to Montana before. I went and drove through it, but staying out there and, we were out there for like 10 days. It's amazing. Amazing country. The animals.
Yeah, that Total Archery Challenge, we were shooting targets from, I guess, 25. I think when I shot was 35, but out to 120.
Yeah, 120. I think that was the Buffalo, was at 120 yards.
Yep.
And
it was like nothing I ever expected. I mean, there was a lot of people, and I think we got held up. And we did shoot the Sitka course inside of the Prime, the big course. But we left from our condo and walked onto the course as soon as it opened because they hadn't shot a couple of targets the day before. And that was at 9:30. We went, shot the last 3 or 4 targets, spent a half hour on the practice range, took the ski lift up, and got done. I got back to my car at 5:30 in the evening, and there was no food. There was water at each of the stations, and you were just walking, and it was, you said, a 4.5 mile loop.
Yeah, I was like, but it's all elevation. I mean, up down the Sitka course was really, that was supposed to, emanate or whatever, the out mountain hunting the goats. So yeah, that was definitely.
Yeah, but I think elevation is also relative because I think if you go out to Montana, it's going to be a little bit different. Yeah. So.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, but it definitely took its toll. Yeah. But.
Another one of the things that we've got coming up this year, and it's really exciting and kind of like just kind of fell into our lap rare, is that we're going to be going to ATA. And so we had been talking about doing this, for 6 months or so, and it's like, what are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? This stuff, and then never read them. You get the thing in the mail from the Bowman's Club, and it's just this person did this and that person did that, and we need help fixing the roof and that. But for whatever reason, that day I read it, and it said, the ATA opened up some spots to some of the smaller clubs, and we've become a member, and we've got tickets if anybody wants them. you're kidding me, right?
Right.
So I texted John and I said, did you read the thing? Do you want to go to ATA? And he's like, what? So,
Well, I was actually at the Bowman's Club that night doing the worker bees. We were replacing some of the targets. And all of a sudden you sent me that message. I'm like, hey, do I want to go to ATA? Hell yeah, I've been trying to figure out a way to go. I'm like, but you got to be an archery shop or something paid, And so, so Russ, the president, was there, and I ended up like, hey, you got tickets to the ATA? And he's like, yeah, you want to go? I'm like, well, hell yeah, I want to go. So we ended up they had 2 tickets left, and then so I pretty much reserved them for Adam and I, and then I talked to Frank, and he's like, well, yeah, I'd like to go. So I ended up getting a hold of Russ, and they set up another ticket for us. And so we're going to go down and scope it all out. Hopefully get to meet some of our. I'm a huge John Dudley fan and Cam Haynes, so as you can tell, I mean my bow is nothing but knock on, and I don't have my Cam Haynes hat on right
I do.
Yeah, mine looks kind of like his. It's full of salt from working out in, but nothing like he's a freaking beast. But yeah, so we get to go to ATA. We're gonna go look at some stuff, and maybe there's some things that we can do for our club too, and then come back and give those guys a report.
Yeah, I was reading. At least these guys don't have email. I won't give out John's email because it's really nice. It's a really nice email.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I'm the contact for that. So I've been getting all the emails from ATA and all the updates, and there's some things in there about becoming instructors and stuff. So I think there's a lot of stuff, and I think I read that this year what they did is they opened it up to a lot of the smaller clubs to try and help out with some of that stuff.
Right.
So I think there are going to be some programs that they probably would like us to check out. But I personally, there's a lot, like I said, I'm not particular as far as it has to be this brand and this.
You're very open on your.
Yeah, so I want to go. I want to go and shoot some of the bows, and I really want you, because John has a much better understanding of, cam timing and how many twists to put in your yoke and all of this sort of thing. To look at that new Darton bow, because of what they've done with their cam system and balancing it.
I haven't even looked at that.
So I want to go and check that out. That's the Darton Spectra E is the bow. But then there's a couple other companies that I had just stumbled upon, I guess. But I'm pretty interested in their stories, like New Breed. Have you heard of their bows?
No, I haven't.
That's a guy, I think they're out of Alabama or down south somewhere, but it was a guy that just started building bows in his garage. They started either casting or machining his own risers and then putting different limbs on them and just messing with the different cams and stuff like that. And then whether he got popular enough or just decided that he was going to go for it, but started building bows. And so, I mean, it's stories like that I think are pretty cool, because it's just like, you don't have to be,
You don't have to be Hoyt.
Yeah, he said, this is what I want to do, and to have the ability to go ahead and just say, all right. And then there's the obsession,
Right.
with that whole thing where, that guy, I'm in the pharmacy industry. He was a pharmacist also, and just decided that he was going to start making bows. And that's what he did. And then their first year, he fell out of a tree stand and broke his back. And so they weren't going to be able to do anything. And Kevin Struther heard about him and just said, hey, I'll help you with next year's bow. So he designed all their bows for their second year, and then they've just kind of took off from there.
Right.
And some of those bows are ridiculous. They're pretty radical, but I've not shot one. So I'd like to go shoot some of those, and just to be able to read about all these companies, and you hear their stories and things that are made in the USA, things that are, I mean, I'm bad at that because I'm shooting a bear and they're not made in the US. But again, being the frugal guy that I am, before I was even looking at flagship bows or anything like that, Bear was making really good products, I guess, at a much different price point. I mean, they didn't have a flagship bow, I think, until the Arena series came out. They didn't have, $1,000 bows. They were making $500 or $600 bows that were, shooting just as well. And I didn't understand like why in the world you would need,
$1,000 bow
or $3,000 bow.
Yeah. Well, like when this goes way back, but I have a long draw. I have, I shoot 31 and a half inch draw. And so, I mean, for a long time, it was just, I would shoot a short bow. And then I remember Matthews come out, and the year they come out with a Z-Max. And that was like, the thing weighed 3 1/4 pounds, and it was super fast, at the time for a single cam. And I was like dead set, I have to have that bow. And so we went up to Jay's Sporting Goods, and which is up in Clare, and we did everything we could to that bow. We took it down, we twisted the cables up, and it just was too short. And finally the guy's like, I know you're dead set on this bow. He goes, but how about try this one? And it was the Feather Max. Same cams and limbs, but it had the less radical riser. And that thing went all the way up to 32 inch draw, so that's what I shot for years, up until the Matthews Q2 XL came out. And so I finally, when that came out, I bought that one. And then it took, quite a while for another, I fell out of the game for a while. Obviously I had, 4 kids and, working full time, and I was building houses and doing that stuff. So, the bow hunting and archery kind of got put off to the side for a while. But then, I think our first trip to Ohio, I was still shooting that Q2 XL. And I killed that little 9-point or whatever you want to call it. It's mainframe 9-10 with that. But then that's when my brother Dan, who's the frickin', the beast of bow hunter, not Dan in fault. Not Dan in fault. He's the real beast, but no. My brother, I guess, call him the beast of Michigan, but because he's killed a lot of deer, and he was, he's a machine. But anyway, those guys were shooting the new Bowtex, and he's like, you should try out the CPXL. I think that's what it was called. But anyway, they didn't. That was the year they sold out, and so then they were switching over, and so.
Is that when all the limbs were folded?
No, they discontinued that model, which they ended up coming out with the Bowtech Boss, and so that's why I ordered that one, and I got it, and that was a long draw bow. It was pretty high let off. It shot well, super fast, but I shot one season with it. I mean, I shot that last year, and for our leagues, ended up luckily getting the high aggregate for the year with that bow, but it was just so temperamental for me anyway. Like, you do anything with your wrist, and that bow just seemed to twist real super.
Well, what's funny about that is that he sold that bow to my brother, who also has a really long draw, and I'm going to have to have him on here to tell his story. They went out west, and he missed a booner, and it's probably now going to be the bow's fault. Therefore, it's going to be John's fault.
No, yeah, I told him. That's why I was like, I want him to shoot it. I mean, it's a great bow. There's a lot of guys that love that bow, but just for me, that little bit. But you know how I am. I'm super picky about how things are. Like, I'm a half inch off to the left, and it's like,
I got to buy a $400 sight because I think this other sight is going to make it just a little bit better.
Yeah. I might say that sometimes, but no. I don't want to blame it on the equipment. That's the thing, So, but yeah, so I switched over to the Hoyt. I think that's probably had a lot to do with Dudley. So.
Yeah, so I think, this is a pretty good introduction to who we are and kind of what what we've got going on. I think we're at about 40 minutes right here. So I think we're going to try and keep them right around 45 minutes to an hour, depending on what we've got to talk about or the things that we've got going on. Like I said, going forward, we're looking at ATA,
which is next week.
Next week, next weekend.
Thursday.
We leave Thursday for ATA, which is going to be awesome. I have basically zero expectations, other than just to be able to see the people walking around that you see on TV. But we're also going to do at least the Total Archery Challenge here in Michigan. John's shooting for Montana. You're putting in for Montana big game like that.
We're going to put in for the combo tags, so hopefully elk, mule deer, or whitetail. And I'd like to do an antelope also, but that's kind of pushing it. I've never been out there and hunted, so. But Eddie, the guy, our friend out there, he's originally he's from here, moved out west, lived in Montana, went down, then he lived in Colorado, and he killed a couple really nice bulls in Colorado. And then now about a year ago or so, he moved up to Bozeman. So hopefully we can get it all set up. They've had a pretty open on the draws. Pretty much if you put in on the general, you get your tags. So hopefully that works out.
Yeah, logistically for me, I don't think this year elk hunt's in my future, but I'm planning on 2019. I guess depending on how John's Montana hunt goes, that may be an option, but I'm looking really hard at Idaho. I know some guys that have hunted out in Idaho and have had success. It's over the counter, and I've got a good buddy of mine that I'm going to bring on here who's been successful a couple different times in Colorado, DIY, no outfitter, no anything, and I think pretty safe to say that's kind of, we're on the same page with that, as far as, not that you couldn't save up all your money and spend $5,000 to go out there, but I just think there's a lot more. It's a lot more personal if you're going out there and you're doing all the work yourself,
right,
and you're not someone's not telling you what to do. And I think I was thinking a lot about this, when I wanted to discuss it was, we've been down to Ohio, do it yourself, and I want to get your brother on to talk about, how he looks at land and things like that. But the first year when John went down and he killed that buck right there, the first day or second day, and kind of kicking himself for it, but we had no idea as far as like what to expect.
The quality of animals.
They met a guy in a bar talking about squirrel hunting who put us on this piece of property. They went down there, hunted it, saw a bunch of deer, but they were tagged out for bucks. So I hunted it that day. I saw 5 different bucks. Had an opportunity and just didn't pan out on a really nice 10, probably 130-inch 10-point. Had him at 50 yards behind this bush, and just a couple more steps and it was going to be done. And then a hot doe came through and busted out of there. And next year, almost to the day, we went down there, bonsai overnight, no sleep. I was in the tree 15 minutes. I killed a 150-inch 10. We were tired and recovered them the next day. Crazy story. We'll get into that some other time.
Yeah, that'll be a whole podcast there.
But that almost to me doesn't feel as good as one of the deer that I've a little 6-point or something that I've killed on my own, going out there and you look at it just on your own. I mean, because you guys found that, and that's PJ killed a really nice buck in that exact same tree in 15 minutes today, this year.
Yeah.
So, but it just kind of feels, even that almost feels like cheating, It's like when something comes together, when you read the sign and you look at it. And
you have more stake in the game at that point.
So going out and doing it yourself, I was thinking about it too, is like, who would I like to see at ATA? Like, if you could hunt with one person or like whatever, like for me, I think it would be like where I would pay to hunt would be at Mountain West with Remy Warren.
Oh,
and
okay.
he's going to be hunting, I think, in Hawaii or somewhere. They scheduled it so that they didn't have to go to ATA or SHOT, I think,
Really?
is what I heard on Timbernet's podcast. But we've got a lot of stuff coming up this year, and hopefully we're going to have some good things to talk about. I'm switching over my style of hunting to run and gun, so be going over, what I'm doing there, and I'm sure John's going to build 12 more bows.
Well, hopefully get some. I would definitely like to get. Going out to Colorado or going out to Montana. This bow here, I love it, but like what you said, it was just I weighed it. It was 7.2 pounds, which is going to be a lot for carrying in the elk country. So it'd be nice to get one of them new RX Ultras. Maybe shave a couple pounds or one, but but yeah, and build some strings and that's all. I have. Like I said, I'm a huge John Dudley fan, so I learned a ton. I've always built my own stuff and built my own arrows, and it's funny, now we're running long, but I remember building my arrows, and the old aluminum arrows, you'd have to scrub them. My dad would be like, get the Comet Cleanser, and you'd scrub them down, get any kind of oil. Then, back then the glues were like terrible. Like I remember they had the old Fletch Tight, and it was crap. You'd shoot, and I swear the fletchings would fly off, So we'd go to the hardware store and get 3M super strength adhesive and glue those up, and you couldn't pull them off with pliers, But back the meaning of this story was I would, build my arrows, and I'd take the glue and put it on the tip and the tail, and I'm watching John Dudley's video on building arrows, and he's, tip to tail, and then he actually talked about how they used to scrub the arrows with cleanser, and it's like, but then he's got so much freaking information. I just started building strings this year because he was talking about he used to use Winner's Choice. Well, then I don't know, something happened, the quality kind of went down, so he's talking about, well, I think I'm just going to start building my own strings. So I started looking into it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to start building my own strings. So that's my first, well, that's actually the second set on that bow. There's a couple hanging there, but I'm going to start getting into the building it, building them, maybe even production or something if I get a different setup. But that's another thing I want to look at. ATA is specialty archery equipment. They're going to do a seminar on building strings with their I'm not sure which one it is. They have it's basically stepper motors that spin it and put your serving on like that. So, but yeah,
Good deal. Yeah, and if anybody's stuck with us this long and you got any questions or you got anything that you want to, that you saw that was at ATA, and, by the time this gets out, it'll probably be already done. But if we saw it or if we talked to anybody down there regarding anything you got any questions about, feel free to get a hold of us either through YouTube or Facebook.
This is definitely going to be, like, I would say most of the people that hunt, like a lot of the guys out there bow hunting, this is going to be, we are you, you guys, we're just your average bow hunters, and we're going to go out and put some new stuff to work.
And we're just really, fortunate. We've got some time, we've got some assets. We're not hunting for our food every meal, so we have some, John's building strings and
Right.
buying a new bow every year, just like most of you guys are. So this is just going to be the regular guys talking about regular hunting stuff.
Right. It cost me, a couple $100 to get started for the strings, but I'm looking at a set of strings for my bow, and they're $170. Well, I can't afford that. But now that I got my jig set up, I can tinker around, and you can spend, $30 for, well, $36 I think for a quarter pound, or $60, and you can get at least probably 10 strings, if you do it right. But anyway, yeah, it's going to be more economical in the long run if I'm building strings for, or for indoor target, or if you're switching stuff up. It's just, if you have any kind of ability at all, you can build a string. I mean, not even ability, just some time, and maybe someone that can weld some shit, fabricate up a jig. I just made that one out of some stuff I got at the hardware store. You can buy some for a couple $100, but I got all my equipment, all the supplies and stuff for a couple $100.
So I think basically what you're saying is we're just
your average
bow hunters with an above average
interest
in archery and bow hunting.
Right.
So
it's going to be all season thing. Now we're in indoor, and then hopefully we'll be shooting some more. I'd like to definitely get in to do some more 3D outside stuff, and then then like I said, the Total Archery Challenge, which that's going to be in June, so that'll actually pretty much start off the